This is the exercise to write a MATLAB script to calculate the function defined by the equations here. And we need to select the values of t from -9 to 9 with the steps of 0.5. And eventually, we're going to plot this function in the figure window. So let's open up the template file, and we will name the file as plot function.n. So the purpose is to calculate the function defined in the slides and plot its value between -9 and 9 with the step of 0.5. And we'll put the date here. So define variables. And the variables we have is the function. We will eventually will have y, the function value. And then the t is the function variable. Now we get to the step of pseudocode. So because this problem is defined very clearly, so there's no need to input the data from the user. So we just need to calculate the t value. So at this exercise required is to use the loops and branches to calculate the function value. So then the next step is to use loop to calculate the function value. And inside the loop, we'll decide which equation to use. If t is greater than or equal to 0, y equals -3t squared plus 5. So we will use this, try to be as the same as a MATLAB expression. And then the next is if t is less than 0, then y equals 3 times t plus 5. Okay, when this is done, then we are going to plot the function. Next, let's look at the loop. As you know that before we do the loop, we always seek something about the initialization. So over here, we should add another step called initialization. So what are the variables needs to be initialized? Well, in this case, we're going to create a new y value. And obviously, it is recommended that we will allocate a space for y before we enter the loop. Second, because this is a loop and we will calculate the y value one by one, and we need the index of y. This is what the initialization should be. Now let's create the t vector. So we are going to use the column operator. So we'll start with -9 with a step of 0.5 and end at 9. And the reason we don't use the line space function is that we don't know how many data points we're going to generate. And it is kind of a wild guess for the numbers. And we probably will not be able to get the step of 0.5. So we use the column operator, the steps of 0.5 is guaranteed. Okay, now let's move to the initialization. So we need to create a vector with the same size as t. So we can use zeros, and then 1 comma, and it will be the size of t. And of course, we're going to initialize the index of y. So the index always starts with 1, so we initialize with the value 1. In addition, we need to add this to the variable list. So this will be the index of y. Okay, now we get to the for loop. So we're going to use the for loop to calculate the y. So for x equals t, which means that every iteration the x will take a value from the t vector. And once we get that, we will look for the x to see if it's greater than or equal to 0. If so, we will use this equation to calculate the y value. So y, don't forget to use the index here, and we can simply copy the equation. And make sure this at this moment this is no longer t, it is x. And then else. And this means that t is less than 0. So I will basically copy paste this equation here and change the sign. So that's so this is to calculate the y value. And don't forget, you need to increment the index so that the next y value will be put into a new element. And then we say end. So up to this point, we have finished to calculate the y value. The next is to plot the y value. And we can plot it with some decorations. So first of all, we can use a plot function, and we use t and y as a data pair. And then what we're going to do is, let's say, how about line width of 2. Let's see how it works. And then we'll say x label of t, and y label, which is y. Okay, done. So we save the file as the plot function. Okay. So let's give it a try. And here you go. You will see this is a plot and this is a curve with the thickness of 2. and you have the Y label and the X label. Of course, you can also change the font size and the font style to make it look better.